Hey everyone, I know on my last video I said my next video would be on doing filler work on the body of the car, but I decided to change direction just a little bit and focus on the doors and hatches and all the other pieces you could see I have laid out here. So the next step would be to get all of these pieces at least in the same condition as the body is. So I'm going to be working on welding, I'm going to be working on sanding, I'm going to be doing filler work, I'm going to be doing dent pulls, and just a whole host of things that I've been working on in the body the past year. I'm going to get that all done hopefully in this video, so stay tuned. This door is probably the lightest as far as rust because I've got it obviously flipped over now. But under this underside here, there was some rusting around. Let's see if I can film this. It'd be a little bit dark, but there is some surface rust here, but nothing through. So I don't have to do any skin work on this door. The only pieces I have to fix, this, and you know, I've got some rust. Pitted rust along the edge here, as well as some pitting over here, and then all of this, just various holes, of course on the top here, just little bits of pitting. All right, first coat is on. Yeah, I would have much preferred to get that piece cut properly so that it butt jointed real nice, but life's not perfect, so what I end up having to do is spend a lot of time grinding to get this, all this booger job that I had to do to bridge that gap closed up. So now I'm going to go over it one more time, just fill in any of the biggest holes and grind that back down, and then pour 15 patch, and we're done with that weld patch. That's the best I can do. I'm going to use my pour 15 patch. It's my duct tape of the auto body world. in my opinion. Take a little bit of brake clean. Whoop. Find where the nozzle's pointing first. Just give it a quick spray just to degrease anything. Like hemorrhoid cream, apply liberally. So in the inside of this passenger door, we got this hole, and it's too big to spoon anything in. I can't get behind it to copper bar and blow weld all in there, and it's too difficult to like make a patch for it. But what I decided to do was I just cut out this with a pair of shears, and what I thought I'd just do is tack it like that, and then hammer it down and just tack it, and then it'll just add a layer to this, but then after I fill it and everything, it'll just make it a little bit larger, no big deal. So I think that's the best way to fix that, is just lap a piece right over it. Good enough. Okay, so for here, you can see there's divots and places like that. All I'm going to do is just, you saw my previous video, I can't remember the one, it's called plugging pinholes or something like that. You just clamp a copper piece behind it, you just tack your welds and just build your welds up, and then when you unclamp and take the copper piece off, it'll be flat from the back, and then you just have to grind it smooth from the front, and then you'll fill in those little areas. So this is going to be the biggest one, but I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and this door will be welded and done. Here it is. It's not perfect, but I grinded it down. At least it's not jagged anymore. Good enough for this neighborhood. And here we are at the driver's door. I have not broken it down yet, so it still have the glass and everything in there and the door handle. So I need to do some breakdown work on it. I might not have time to do that today. But just to give a comparison to the driver or the passenger door, what's interesting is I have no problems on the lower end of it. I mean, other than some rust, some surface rust, I need to sand. It's fine. This is a problem. I could probably do this with port 15 patch, but that's pitted all the way through. And this is about the same as the other one. Actually, this is probably worse, but not much harder to fix. But there's actually no issues on the underside here, but it's all, I'm gonna have to cut out a piece like this and just put in a whole new piece here. And then, but the worst part is I do have to actually get into the body skin here. I have to cut about, this much out, probably to right there, maybe, or right to here. I've already needle scaled it, so this is the extent of all the rust everywhere. So I've already needled it. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and cut that out to about right there. I've cut all of that out, applied rust converter, and so there's going to be 3 patches I'm going to work on here. The first one is, if you look at this support rib, it's not attached here. It's attached here, and this one is rotted away, and you can see where it is flanged to where you can attach it. So cut off a piece of scrap metal in my scrap bin, put it in my Harbor Freight brake. It's about all it's good for is cheap, thin sheet metal, small thin sheet metal. Then go over to my anvil, put on here, make sure it's pounded flat. And then here is the piece. So the way I'm going to do this is, it's going to go, obviously it's L-shaped, right? So it's going to go here like this. What I'm going to do is just trace where, right here, trace that out and cut that out, and then just butt weld that in and just tack it in here, and that should be the first piece. Well, there's my patch. It's not pretty, but it holds, and it'll hold the rail just fine. So next, let's move on to the actual skin over this. So what I've done is I've taken the old piece out here, and it had a little lip to go along the edge here, and I pounded it down flat. So here's the piece pounded flat, and I just laid it across a new piece of metal, and I'm just going to this edge here is pretty much full hole, so I can count on that being the right size for the piece, and then I can kind of see on the other side where that should end as well. So I think this looks pretty good. I'm just going to draw it with I'm just going to scribe this line here. And then I'm going to cut this out. I'm just going to voice over this to save time. If you notice, my welding helmet says cobalt. That'll be an important detail later, which is why I struggle with it. But I decided not to put my piece in a brake, and I decided it was easier to just put the piece in and weld the top because it lined up perfectly, and then just use a dolly and a hammer and a seamer to kind of put that 90-degree bend into it. I also tried to use a technique that someone told me with using an air Notice I have my little air gun down there near me, and every so often in the weld, blow some air on it to cool it off, or during the grinding process. I still ended up warping the metal though, so I don't know. If one of these days I'll get good enough to actually weld in a patch of thin sheet metal and not warp it to have to do body work after the fact. Well, besides heating up the panel and warping it a little bit right here, which I'll have to just heat shrink out, I got this done. Not the best job, I'm just not a good welder, but it'll work. I'll just put some Core 15 patch all over the seam here, sand it down, and fill. So before I go to weld up this last piece, I wanted to just sand the whole door down while waiting for this to dry, the rust converter. So I sanded the face of it down, and I mentioned, or when I was doing the welding, there is some rippling here. Let me see if I can, this situation where, hopefully that gets on camera, but where this thing could go down or up, and then maybe a little bit right there. But for this situation, what I'm going to do is a technique that's worked for me in the past, is to grab first of all, sand it down to metal, because there can't be any paint on it, otherwise you'll burn the paint. Get a MAP gas torch. This is my old welding torch, or soldering torch for plumbing, with a MAP gas cylinder, and a bucket of water, cold water, and a rag. And what I'm going to do is heat up, find the spot in the middle where it seems to be thinking, looks like that's right here. So I'm going to heat this up and then put the cold, if you have a situation where it stays pushed down and you can't get it back up, you do need to lift it up or put something behind it to hold it up. But in this situation, it stays up by itself, so I'm just going to heat it up and put that cold compress on it and hope that it re-shrinks the metal back to where it stays up like that. So let's give that a shot. Hopefully this old torch still works. I also have my slapping spoon and my slapping spoon and my dolly, and I'll go up underneath it and also slap it while it's going. Yeah, so it works pretty good. I mean, it now does not stay down. It's in the default positions. Let's see if there's anything else. Well, that one stayed. Hold on. May need to go over here a little bit more. One more time right here. Hold this under there. there too. It's a lot easier though. If I was a better welder, I would not have to do any of this. I think I got it. Probably doesn't look like it from the top, but if you look at it from underneath, looks pretty good. I burnt it a little bit, too much heat right there, but I'll just sand that off. Okay, sorry for being in the old part of my garage, but this is the dusty part, so I wanted to move out here. I'm gonna do a little bit of filler, like again, while waiting for that to dry. So before I do that, I'm gonna do a little bit of solvent prep, and then we'll mix up some filler. Okay, so next we're going to apply the filler. One of the things as an amateur I never quite got was how do you mix filler properly, or how much hardener do you put in it? And I got so many, I mean, if you read the can, it says mix 2% of hardener, right? A couple BB size or whatever. And I remember trying that one time. I mixed out the hardener onto my tray, and it said like 2%, so I thought, okay, I'll put a little dot on there. So yeah, following instructions, 2%. I don't know what 2% looks like. Okay, so that's like a little dot like that. And that's when I first did it. That's all I did, just a tiny little dot, and I thought that was good. So I mixed it up. Didn't harden. It didn't stick. Then I saw somebody do, well, if you take your pile and you draw a line all the way across the pile with the hardener, so like go from here all the way across, just one line across your pile, then I did that, then the hardener dried way too quick. So I think what I settled on is, I've seen another person say, you go from the middle, just draw a line from the middle out. So just middle out, that's enough. So that's kind of what I've stuck with, and I've done a lot of, I was going to say trial and error, more error than trial. But the other thing when I learned is when you're mixing it, it starts out gray, and then whatever your hardener is, in this case it's a bright blue color, you need to work it in enough such that keep folding and working it. See how it's streaky? I don't know if you can see that. I mean, not well lit. It should not be streaky. It should be uniformly should turn the gray all a lighter blue color, and you shouldn't see any streaks of hardener in it. That's when you know it's been mixed thoroughly and it's ready to apply. And it's just a matter of constantly folding, scraping, turning it, and that's what I want. I want a consistent bluish look towards blue throughout. That's one of the problems I had before when not mixing enough hardener, and it's if it's still gray, it's not going to work. Okay, so this is starting to set up, so I'm going to go ahead and start applying. Now, once you're done applying the filler, obviously you're gonna have to wait for it to dry, but you can go ahead and scrape your tools off, and I used a little bit of acetone to just wipe my tools off, and that usually takes that filler right off of it, and you can use them again. All right, we'll let this dry and move on to the next door and then come back to that when it's dry. All right, it's the next day. I'm going to continue welding. I had to put off my welding yesterday because this thing. Just to give you guys maybe a little advice on welding, because I'm new and I can't give advice on actual doing the welding because I'm still just okay, if not worse than okay. But here's the thing, welding, from my experience, is about 20% skill and 80% having the proper equipment, and that equipment being in good working order and appropriate for the task that you're doing. That Miller 135, I bought that used a while back. I never could get, for a while I was just never could get good welding with it. And I thought it was me. Well, I had a bad gas regulator that I replaced. I re-sleeved and put smaller wire because what I'm doing mostly is sheet metal. So that 0.25 or 0.24 wire in it, and re-sleeved, re-tipped, fixed all that. Immediately became a better welder after I did that. After my equipment was properly functioning and the new wire was properly tensioned and everything inside the sleeve was proper. Same thing yesterday. I've been probably dealing with this helmet issues with this helmet for the past year. It's probably 3 years old. It's a Cobalt. When I first bought it, I loved it. It's a huge viewing area, but it has just a terrible, terrible auto darkening assembly in it. This thing has just been giving me fits such that yesterday I was literally having to look through the corner of the screen to start, and then once the arc started, I'd have to immediately shift because the auto darkening has degraded so much to where it's only working in the middle of the screen. There's spots developing inside of the assembly. They're not on the lens. They're actually inside the auto darkening assembly, and I basically can't see. So I went and picked up this last night just because I needed something for today, and it's Memorial Day weekend, so Harbor Freight's giving a bunch of discounts. And again, just being able to see my welding in before I start and then during the welding, it has already made me a better welder. So if you're having problems with welding, yeah, it might be your technique, but also make sure your equipment's working first before you just deem yourself as, or deem welding as something you hate doing or you're not good at, because it's 80% equipment and 20% skill. Okay, next up is the back hatch. I guess I'm sticking with the easy stuff first because, as you can see, this one is in very good shape. I don't know if I need to do any body work or any welding work. Well, I take that back. There was some welding work already done on this. If you recall from my last, one of my videos on pinhole rust remediation, while it was in the car, I did all the sill, fixed all these, the rotten chunks missing from the sill using that copper bar technique. And so you can refer to that video, but this is pretty good. I mean, I think the only thing, well, let me flip it over and show you the outer skin. So here's the outer skin. The rust is all around here, and there's 2 large holes here, and then several small ones. Looks like maybe the previous owner, I don't know what these little holes are. Plaques, a license plate holder, I have no idea what these large holes are. Well, until I figure it out, I'm just going to sand it all down and focus on the holes that definitely look to be rust related. Well, here it is all sanded, sticker's gone. There's definitely a little bit of tiny pinhole stuff here and here, so I'll fill this with Pour 15 patch. I think I figured out what at least these 5 holes look like. I looked at my old logo and they pretty much perfectly line up with the 5 holes. So there must have been a logo on it, and they just kind of put some sheet metal screws in there. So I will go ahead and fill these. Okay, last bit of welding for today. When I looked at the pictures of a 1978 bus, it's just the latch mechanism and nothing else. So this hole, these holes, not supposed to be there. Everything's supposed to be smooth. These little pinholes were filled with Pour 15 patch. That'll be good enough to fill. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this over. And these holes I can access. I don't know if I can access this one. That one I'm not sure what to do yet, but for sure these 2, what I may do is flip it over and put the copper, lay it on top of a copper bar, and then fill it in. Let's give that a shot. All right, here we go. Got a piece of copper bar. This thing laying on a copper bar, which is laying on this black welding mat that the door's laying on. I'll probably still burn myself somehow, but hopefully I've done all the precautions. See what happens. I have pretty good success with this technique. One thing I will warn you of is with that copper backing, if you shoot weld right into it, you could have a little bit of rebound. So just make sure to kind of angle your gun and shoot weld around the outside of the hole, and then fill in the outside of the hole and then fill in the middle, but don't ever shoot your weld in directly, otherwise you might get some rebound. Now I'm just going to finish from the top. I flipped it over. Good enough. It's at least mostly filled. I'm just going to give it a degreasing wipe down and a little bit of Pour 15 body man helper, and we're done with that. Okay, next up I'm going to touch on the engine lid here. Now this one did have some pitted rust all on the bottoms here. What's interesting, what we did was we sanded a lot of this down. I think everything, and then there's some major dents right here. I got to figure out how to dolly. That's going to be hard to dolly right there. Try to do something with that. The back side, I think a long time ago I poured 15 the entire thing and prepped it, and sanded, prepped, poured 15 the entire back side, and you can kind of see that there's just some little pits. Right, little pits right there, a little bit, I might even touch that, but that's basically it. And what we did though was we flooded, I don't know if you can see, but sorry, I'm gonna have to do this with one hand, but we basically flooded pore 15 all inside here, which, basically on the outer skin, the pore 15 is all coming out through. If there's any pinholes in here, it's all just coming out. Yeah, so that pore 15 paint is a rust encapsulation, so that should encapsulate any pits in there. What I'm going to do is go ahead and sand it all down, see where we're at with this whole bottom part here, and then then put some pore 15 patch anywhere, or just apply a thin layer of pore 15 patch in there on both sides. And then I'll set this aside for this to cure, and then we'll basically be done with kind of the welding work there. Well, after sanding it down, this isn't too bad. This is, we're talking real pinholes here. Really, probably the biggest one is that one right there. It's tiny, so that'll be no problem to just wipe a thin layer of pore 15 patch on there. Everything else is solid. The only part of this that I'm not happy about is the damage here. There's a bit of a dent right there. That can probably just be filled. That's no big deal. But this dent and this dent here, not quite sure how I'm going to go about trying to hammer these out. Maybe find something with a 90-degree turn to it and try to hammer it down. But yeah, I'm going to try to work on that and see what I could do. This is just a bad place to have that kind of damage. Okay, well, I cannot seem to get into here with a hammer or dolly, so I'm going with a different option. We'll see what this does. This is my cheapo Harbor Freight stud welder dent repair slide hammer tool. Let's see what happens. Dent worked pretty well, and now I'm just going to apply some solvent. Before this, I sand everything down, including the port 15 patch, as well as all the old paint. And now I'm just mixing up some filler, and I'll do filler mostly about on the bottom edge and then on that dent at the top. You guys remember that guy at the beginning of the video who was all just bright-eyed and energetic and ambitious and said he was going to get all the doors and hatches ready for paint by the end of the weekend? Well, long story short, that didn't happen. The weekend's almost over, and I'm just a sweaty, dusty husk of a man and ready to give it the quits. But that being said, I did get some stuff done. Now, I've been editing the video over the course of the last few days, and it is getting quite long. So I tried to cut out, repetitive stuff and just keep it down as much as I can. I'll try to get it down to half an hour. We'll see. But yeah, that being said, let me just wrap it up right now and show you what I did get done. Well, maybe I'll just show you what I did not get done. I didn't even touch the main sliding door. That being said, there's not much to do, and I probably won't film any of this. I need to take off the handle and the mechanism, but again, there's just this rust, and the rest of the sill is fine, just needs to be sanded down, and then there's just a lot of surface rust spots all over, and that's really it. It just needs to be sanded down, and I need to deal with that one little spot. I'm not even going to film that. That's going to be probably fairly easy. It's just a lot of square inches. Okay, the driver door. I didn't get it finished really, but it's all welded up. The welding's on it's done. It got one. I did one coat of primer, and then had to sand most of it off and do some more spooning and body work. So that kind of, then I kind of wanted to quit on it. But I did get the underside done and sanded, and I just didn't get to the primer. Now for the good news. Here's my engine lid. Pretty smooth, all primed up. This came out okay. I mean, it's still not perfect, but from, 5-10 feet away, it's not nearly as noticeable as it used to be. So I'll do a little more work on that, but that's pretty much done. All the little rust scars on the bottom are all disappeared. Here's the back hatch. No more holes. We had what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Remember, we had 2 big holes, and then we had 5 small holes that I think held an emblem with some sheet metal screws, and all that's gone. It's nice and smooth, and it's primed up. Now you notice I stopped the primer here. One note of advice is, you can do some body work, prime it, sand it off, do some more, filler, prime, sand. So this isn't the last of my sanding and priming before I do the epoxy priming, but what I recommend not doing is if you haven't finished prepping the old paint, then don't prime over it, because what this tells me is wherever I stopped, find the nearest body line, like right there, and re-sand it. So yeah, I just want to make sure that I don't prime over something that's not ready to be primed, and I make it clear to myself where that line is. Similarly on the passenger door, you know, I'll just really call that the line, but you know, I stopped because I haven't finished sanding the old paint yet. But everywhere that is primed, it was sanded all the way, or at least down to the original primer. This is the passenger door, so this one is primed and looking pretty good. I mean, yeah, my filler work, you might not be able to see, but yeah, there's little dimples, stuff like that. It needs to be resanded at a higher grade, and blocked. But yeah, I mean, and then I don't want to show you the bottom because I don't want to flip it over, but the bottom is obviously patched and filled and sanded and primed. So yeah, pretty happy that I got most of that door done. Of course, I got to do the insides. Now, with the insides, and I won't do this on film, but I'm just telling you what I'm going to do. All the pockets in the bottoms, you know, anywhere I can get in the insides, in the bottom, I'm going to clean out as best I can with, you know, whatever, degreaser, solvents, and scrub them down real good in the insides. All the insides of the door, all the bottoms, I can pretty much access all the bottoms around there. And then I've got a couple, I was going to do port 15, but I got a couple cans of this. Somehow I ended up with 2 cans. But I'll go ahead and throw that, spray that rust reformer from Rust-Oleum all inside the bottoms there. So all that'll be coated black, probably up until the whole, you know, probably up in the whole line of that. So every hatch is going to have that sprayed all up in the bottom, and hopefully no more rust occurs at the bottom there. Well, that's it for this video, and I apologize for it being so long, but I got a lot done. There's a lot of hours of footage that I did have to cut and save you, but yeah, appreciate you sticking with me. And next video should be on the do more body work on the actual shell of the car. So I hope to see you then. Thanks for watching.